Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we are decoding a really specific, absolutely fascinating, and honestly a pretty rare social dynamic over in Japan. Now, if you've ever traveled internationally, you already know that figuring out local social cues is, well, it's a lot, right? You're basically stepping into this whole new world with unwritten rules that have been around for generations. And Japan is famous for having these deeply ingrained, highly formalized social etiquettes. I mean, from exactly how you hand over a business card to where you're supposed to sit in a meeting room, there is a pattern for practically everything. But what happens when one of those deeply ingrained rules just gets completely flipped on its head? Well, in this explainer, we're zooming in on the exact mechanics of a very specific romantic anomaly. We're going to explore what's really happening beneath the surface when the standard script is totally thrown right out the window. So let's get into it and decode the Japanese approach. Okay, let's dive right into this with a quote that sits at the very heart of today's topic. It's this stark, almost movie-like scenario. If a girl approaches you first in Japan, you're either very lucky or you're the target. I mean, just think about the weight of a phrase like that. Usually we think of someone coming up to say hi as a pretty simple, universal thing, right? It's just striking up a chat at a coffee shop or a bar. It literally happens millions of times a day everywhere else. But our source material is flagging something big here. When this specific thing happens in Japan, it comes loaded with a double meaning. The stakes are instantly cranked up. You've either won the absolute social lottery and bumped into someone who just felt an undeniable spark, or someone has a very premeditated agenda for you. You aren't just a random person at the bar anymore. You have stepped into a highly specialized category. Now, to really understand why this is such a big deal, we have to establish our baseline. And the baseline in Japanese dating and social culture is this. Women are generally much less likely to approach men first. It simply isn't the standard expectation. Culturally speaking, romantic interactions there often rely on introductions through mutual friends or maybe group blind dates, which are known as gokon, or just situations where the guy takes the active initiating role. And, when you're looking at any complex social topic, figuring out the baseline is absolutely crucial. Because if the data tells us that an event is culturally rare, then when it actually happens, it's a massive flag. Since a proactive approach from a woman isn't the norm, when she does make the move, it signals that the usual rules of engagement are officially suspended. The whole interaction is instantly charged with a totally different kind of energy. To truly grasp just how rare and significant this deviation is, we need to learn the everyday vocabulary. According to our source, the standard scenario, a guy approaching a girl, has a specific name in Japan. It's called nanpa. And this is the expected, traditional direction of the interaction. You'll see this all the time in busy nightlife spots like Shibuya or Shinjuku, where young guys are actively trying to strike up conversations with women walking by. And by giving this behavior its own distinct name, the culture is clearly defining the standard practice. Nanpa is the baseline in action. It's got its own unwritten rules, its own expected rejections, and its own cultural space. It is, for all intents and purposes, the established status quo for making the first move. Okay, so if Nampa is the standard, what happens when we intentionally break the rule? Enter the word yaku. As our sources define it, yaku literally just means reverse. It is the exact opposite. But socially, it's not just a reverse, it's a total disruption. Reversing a deeply ingrained social norm sends a literal shockwave through the interaction. It takes the power dynamic, the expectations, the traditional gender roles, and just spins the whole shebang entirely around. When you hear gyaku applied to a social behavior, you know for sure that whatever standard concept comes next is about to be completely flipped upside down, and suddenly everyone involved has to navigate without their usual social map. And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast. We have nampa, guy approaches girl, and in total contrast, gyaku nampa, where the girl makes the first move. But here's where the source material adds a really crucial, highly specific qualifier that takes this from a simple gender role swap to a full-blown cultural phenomenon. It notes that the term gyaku nanpa is predominantly used when a Japanese girl makes the first move toward a foreign guy. So we aren't just talking about a woman approaching a man anymore, we are talking about an interaction that deliberately crosses international boundaries. The entire dynamic shifts when the guy receiving the attention happens to be an expat or visitor. So this isn't just breaking a gender norm, it is stepping completely outside the standard Japanese to Japanese social script. So, how does this actually play out in the real world? Well, imagine you're a foreign visitor in Japan. The baseline rule gets broken. The gyaku nanpa is happening. The behavioral markers here are highly specific. She is the one actively closing the gap to get your contact info. Maybe she asks for your number, or more likely, she asks for your line. And if you didn't know, Line is the absolute undisputed champion of messaging apps in Japan. Initiating contact by asking for that takes a significant amount of boldness. I mean, she has to step way out of her comfort zone, skip the typical waiting game, and make a very direct escalation. In a culture that places a huge premium on reading the room and relying on subtle, nonverbal cues, asking for someone's line point blank is a massive, proactive leap. Which naturally brings us to a massive question. If she's willing to break the cultural norm, step right up, and ask for your line, is she just genuinely interested in you? And honestly, according to the source material, the fair answer is yes. There's a very good chance she is. Japanese culture is constantly modernizing. There are plenty of women who are naturally outgoing, super confident, and totally willing to go after what they want. You might just be incredibly charismatic. You guys might have had a great organic conversation, and hey, you might just be having a fantastic day. That beautiful spontaneity, that represents the lucky half of our opening quote. But, as we all know, human behavior is rarely ever that simple. Remember the second half of that quote? The slightly more ominous part about being the target? So, the crucial point is, if it's not organic luck, it might be the alternative. She might be what is termed a Gaijin hunter. Now, Gaijin is simply a Japanese word for foreigner. So these are girls who specifically, actively go after foreign guys. In this scenario, her approach, the gyaku nampa, isn't necessarily about who you are as an individual, but rather what you are. The source material outlines a few underlying motivations for this. For some, it's honestly just a desire to practice English for free with a native speaker. For others, it's an infatuation with Western pop culture or an attraction to foreign physical features. And for some women, dating a foreigner is actually a way to actively rebel against traditional Japanese patriarchal expectations. They seek out foreigners because they believe foreign men will treat them differently than local men would. But in any of these cases, you represent a specific demographic she is hunting for. You aren't just a guy she bumped into, you are the focus of a very specific social pursuit. So we've traced the cultural baseline, we've learned vocabulary of nampa and that linguistic disruption of gyako nampa, and we've unpacked the very different motivations behind this incredibly rare interaction. So I'll leave you with this. If you ever find yourself in Japan, standing there while a girl breaks all the cultural norms to ask for your line, take a close look at the interaction. Read the subtext. Are you experiencing a moment of genuine, spontaneous connection that makes you incredibly lucky? Or do you simply fit a highly specific profile, providing an English lesson or a cultural escape, effectively making you the hunted? It is a fascinating, complex social puzzle to navigate. Keep analyzing the world around you, keep learning, and I will catch you guys next time.